Marcus Wheeler had seen enough suffering for several lifetimes, but nothing had prepared him for what he discovered on that rain-soaked October night in rural Nebraska. The storm had been relentless, pounding his 200-acre farm with torrential rain and howling winds that threatened to tear apart everything he had worked so hard to rebuild over the past 5 years. At 52 years old, Marcus carried both visible and invisible scars from his time serving 3 tours in Afghanistan. The shrapnel wounds that crisscrossed his left arm and face told only part of his story. The deeper wounds were the ones that had driven him to seek solitude on this remote farm, where he could find peace among the animals that never judged his past or questioned his demons. As he made his final rounds through the storm to ensure his livestock were secure, his flashlight beam caught something that made him stop dead in his tracks. There, collapsed in the mud near the far fence line, was the largest bull he had ever seen. But this wasn't just any bull. This was an albino giant, his pure white coat now soaked and stained with mud, his massive frame heaving with labored breathing. "Jesus Christ," Marcus whispered, approaching cautiously through the driving rain. The bull had to weigh at least 2,500 pounds, and even lying down, his presence was intimidating. But as Marcus drew closer, he could see that this magnificent animal was in serious distress, possibly dying. The bull's pale pink eyes, a striking feature of his albinism, tracked Marcus's movement with a mixture of fear and resignation. There were no identification tags, no signs of ownership, and no indication of how this massive creature had ended up on his property during the storm. Marcus's first instinct was to call the local authorities or animal control, but something in the bull's eyes stopped him. Perhaps it was recognition, one wounded soul acknowledging another. Or maybe it was the way the rain seemed to wash away all pretense, leaving only the raw truth of suffering that Marcus knew all too well. "Easy, big guy," Marcus said softly, removing his jacket despite the cold rain. "I'm not going to hurt you." He draped the jacket over the bull's massive head, providing minimal protection from the storm while trying to assess the animal's condition. The bull was clearly exhausted, his breathing shallow and irregular. Marcus could see cuts and scrapes along his sides, suggesting he had traveled a long distance or fought through difficult terrain to reach this spot. Most concerning was the way the animal seemed to have simply given up, as if he had finally found a place where he felt safe enough to surrender to whatever fate awaited him. Dr. Sarah Chen, the local veterinarian, would normally be Marcus's first call in a situation like this. But the storm had knocked out phone service, and the roads were too dangerous for emergency vehicles. Marcus realized he was completely on his own with a dying giant who weighed more than a small car. As the hours passed, Marcus never left the bull's side. He brought tarps and blankets to create a makeshift shelter, used a generator to power a heat lamp, and even brought buckets of warm water to try to help the animal maintain body temperature. Every action was motivated by an instinct he couldn't quite explain, a compulsion to fight death itself if necessary. "You're not giving up on me, are you?" Marcus asked the bull around midnight, his own voice barely audible over the storm. "Because I'm not giving up on you. I've seen too much death, lost too many friends. Not tonight, not on my watch." The bull's response was barely perceptible, a slight shift in his massive head, turning toward Marcus as if acknowledging his presence and determination. For Marcus, it was enough to fuel his resolve to continue the vigil through the longest night of his life. Neighbors who knew Marcus understood that his dedication to saving wounded animals stemmed from his own experiences with trauma and recovery. He had spent years learning to heal himself, and somewhere along the way, he had discovered that helping others, whether human or animal, was often the most effective medicine for his own wounds. As dawn approached and the storm began to subside, Marcus had no way of knowing that his decision to stay with this mysterious albino giant would set in motion events that would challenge everything he thought he knew about second chances, the power of determination, and the unexpected connections that can form between two beings who have both stared death in the face and refused to surrender. Will Marcus's stubborn refusal to abandon the dying albino bull be enough to save the massive animal's life, or will dawn reveal that some battles cannot be won through determination alone? As the first rays of sunlight broke through the dissipating storm clouds, Marcus Wheeler witnessed something that would stay with him for the rest of his life. The albino giant that had been fighting for breath just hours earlier was slowly, almost majestically, rising to his feet with a strength that seemed to come from nowhere. Marcus rubbed his exhausted eyes, certain that fatigue and stress were playing tricks on his mind. But there was no denying what he was seeing. The massive bull was not only alive, but standing with a dignity and presence that took Marcus's breath away. The animal's pure white coat, now cleaned by the rain, seemed to glow in the early morning light like something from a dream. "I'll be damned," Marcus whispered, his voice hoarse from the long night. The bull turned his pale pink eyes toward Marcus and let out a low, rumbling sound that somehow conveyed both gratitude and strength. It was as if the animal was saying, "Thank you for not giving up on me." Dr. Sarah Chen arrived at the farm just after 7 a.m., having received Marcus's message as soon as phone service was restored. She expected to find either a recovered animal or one that needed immediate emergency treatment, but what she discovered defied her 20 years of veterinary experience. "Marcus, this is impossible," Dr. Chen said as she completed her examination of the bull. "Based on the condition you described last night, this animal should either be dead or require intensive medical intervention. His vital signs are not just normal, they're exceptional. Heart rate, breathing, temperature, all perfect. It's like he experienced some kind of miraculous recovery." The transformation was so dramatic that Dr. Chen insisted on running additional tests to ensure they weren't missing any underlying health issues. Blood work, physical examination, even x-rays of the areas where Marcus had observed injuries the night before. Everything came back completely normal. If this incredible story of courage, determination, and miraculous healing touches your heart, we'd be so grateful if you could take a moment to subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. Your support helps us share more amazing stories like this one about the power of never giving up and the miracles that can happen when compassion meets unwavering determination. Every subscription and like means the world to us and helps these inspiring tales reach people who need to see that hope and healing are always possible, even in the darkest moments. Thank you for being part of our community that believes in the extraordinary power of love and perseverance. What puzzled everyone even more was the bull's behavior toward Marcus. The massive animal, who should have been wary of humans given his obvious history of hardship, seemed to have formed an immediate and profound bond with the scarred farmer who had refused to leave his side during the storm. "I've never seen anything like this," Dr. Chen observed as she watched the bull follow Marcus around the pasture like a giant devoted dog. "This level of trust and attachment typically takes months or years to develop between humans and cattle, especially with an animal that's clearly been through trauma." Marcus had decided to call the bull Ghost, a name that seemed appropriate for an albino animal who had appeared mysteriously in the night and experienced what could only be described as a resurrection at dawn. Ghost weighed approximately 2,800 pounds according to Dr. Chen's assessment, making him one of the largest bulls she had ever examined. The mystery of Ghost's origins deepened when Sheriff Tom Bradley arrived to investigate reports of the unusual discovery. There were no missing animal reports in the county, no escaped livestock from local farms, and no evidence of how such a massive animal could have appeared on Marcus's property without leaving a clear trail. "It's like he materialized out of thin air," Sheriff Bradley noted after reviewing the lack of tracks or other evidence. "The storm was so intense last night that it washed away most traces, but something this size should have left some kind of trail. The whole situation is frankly bizarre." Marcus found himself in the unusual position of having acquired a 2,800-pound companion with no legal or practical roadmap for what came next. Ghost clearly had no intention of leaving the farm, and Marcus discovered that he had no desire to see the magnificent animal go anywhere else. "I've been alone on this farm for 5 years," Marcus told Dr. Chen as they watched Ghost explore his new surroundings with obvious contentment. "Maybe it's time I had some company. And if this big guy wants to stay, I think I can handle the responsibility." The logistics of caring for such a massive animal were daunting. Ghost required approximately 30 pounds of hay per day, had specific nutritional needs due to his size, and needed shelter modifications to accommodate his extraordinary dimensions. But Marcus approached these challenges with the same determination he had shown during the storm. Local feed store owner Janet Rodriguez was amazed when Marcus arrived to purchase supplies for his new companion. "I've been in this business for 25 years, and I've never sold feed for an albino bull," she said. "You're going to be famous around here, Marcus. People are already talking about the miracle bull who appeared during the storm." As the first week passed, Ghost's presence began to transform Marcus's daily routine and outlook in ways he hadn't expected. The simple act of caring for another living being, especially one that seemed to genuinely appreciate his efforts, provided a sense of purpose and connection that Marcus had been missing for years. The bond between the scarred veteran and the mysterious albino giant was becoming something remarkable, a partnership between two survivors who had found exactly what they needed in each other at precisely the right moment. 3 months after Ghost's miraculous appearance, Marcus Wheeler's farm had become an unlikely destination for visitors from across Nebraska and beyond. Word had spread about the albino giant and the veteran who had saved his life, drawing curious onlookers, animal enthusiasts, and media attention that Marcus never wanted but had learned to tolerate for Ghost's sake. What nobody expected was how profoundly Ghost's presence would change Marcus himself. The nightmares that had plagued him for years began occurring less frequently. The hypervigilance and anxiety that had made social interaction difficult started to ease as he found himself talking to Ghost about everything: his war experiences, his struggles with civilian life, and his hopes for the future. "That bull is better therapy than anything the VA ever offered me," Marcus confided to Dr. Chen during one of Ghost's routine checkups. "Having something to care for, something that depends on me but doesn't judge me, has given me a reason to get up in the morning that I haven't had in years." Ghost seemed to sense Marcus's emotional state with uncanny accuracy. On days when the veteran's PTSD symptoms were particularly challenging, the massive bull would position himself closer to Marcus, providing a calming presence that somehow made the world feel more manageable. When Marcus worked on farm repairs or maintenance, Ghost would follow at a respectful distance, like a silent guardian watching over his friend. The relationship had also sparked Marcus's interest in learning more about animal behavior and therapy. He began reading extensively about human-animal bonds, particularly the therapeutic benefits that large animals could provide for people dealing with trauma and emotional challenges. Dr. Rebecca Martinez, a specialist in equine and bovine therapy from the University of Nebraska, visited the farm to study Ghost's remarkable behavior and his impact on Marcus's well-being. What she found exceeded her expectations and challenged conventional understanding of therapeutic animal relationships. "What we're observing here is extraordinary," Dr. Martinez explained after spending several days documenting their interactions. "Ghost demonstrates an intuitive understanding of Marcus's emotional needs that's typically seen only in animals specifically trained for therapy work. Yet Ghost has had no formal training. His responses appear to be entirely instinctual. The most remarkable example occurred during a severe thunderstorm in January. Marcus, who had always struggled with loud noises due to his combat trauma, found himself on the verge of a panic attack as the thunder intensified. Without any prompting, Ghost moved to position himself between Marcus and the direction of the loudest thunder, creating a massive warm barrier that seemed to absorb the sound and provide physical comfort. "He knew exactly what I needed before I knew it myself," Marcus later wrote in his journal. "It was like having a 2,800-pound guardian angel who understood that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is just stand between someone and their fears." Local veterans began visiting the farm after hearing about Marcus's remarkable recovery and the role Ghost played in his healing process. What started as informal visits evolved into something more structured when Marcus realized that other veterans were experiencing similar benefits from spending time with Ghost. Jake Morrison, a Vietnam veteran who had been struggling with severe depression, became a regular visitor. "There's something about being around that bull that puts things in perspective," Jake explained. "He's been through something traumatic too. You can see it in his eyes. But he chose to trust again, to form connections again. If he can do that, maybe I can too." The visits from other veterans led Marcus to consider expanding his farm's role in helping people heal from trauma. He began researching the requirements for establishing a therapeutic animal program, not as a formal business venture, but as a way to share the healing he had experienced with others who might benefit. Ghosts seemed to understand and approve of these developments. The massive bull displayed remarkable gentleness with visitors, especially those who showed signs of emotional distress. He would approach slowly, allow himself to be touched and petted, and often seemed to mirror the calm, grounding presence that had been so beneficial for Marcus. "It's like Ghost knows he has a job to do," observed Maria Santos, a social worker who had brought several clients to visit the farm. "He responds differently to each person based on what they seem to need. Sometimes he's playful and engaging. Other times, he's just a calm, stable presence. It's almost supernatural." The transformation in Marcus was evident to everyone who knew him. His sister Linda, who lived in Omaha and had worried about his isolation for years, was amazed by the change she saw during her visits. "Marcus is like a different person," Linda told their mother during a phone call. "He's more relaxed, more social, more hopeful about the future. That bull saved my brother's life just as much as Marcus saved his. They rescued each other." As winter gave way to spring, Marcus found himself contemplating possibilities he had never imagined before Ghost's arrival. The idea of using his farm to help other veterans and trauma survivors heal was becoming more than just a dream. It was becoming a calling that felt as natural and necessary as breathing. What new challenges and opportunities will emerge as Marcus considers expanding his farm's mission? And how will Ghost adapt to playing a larger role in helping others find the healing they desperately need? 1 year after Ghost's miraculous recovery, Marcus Wheeler's farm had officially become Peaceful Acres Veteran Sanctuary, a therapeutic facility that was quietly revolutionizing how combat trauma was being treated in rural Nebraska. The transformation had been gradual but profound, driven by the undeniable evidence that Ghost presence created healing opportunities that traditional therapy couldn't replicate. The sanctuary operated on a simple principle. Veterans could visit, stay for extended periods, or simply spend time with Ghost and the other animals Marcus had gradually added to the farm. There were no fees, no formal treatment protocols, and no pressure to discuss their experiences unless they chose to do so. Ghost had proven to be a natural therapy animal, somehow intuiting what each visitor needed from their interaction. With anxious veterans, he remained calm and still, providing a grounding presence. With those dealing with anger, he demonstrated patience and gentle strength. For veterans struggling with depression, Ghost often initiated playful interactions that seemed to reignite sparks of joy that had been dormant for years. Dr. Martinez had documented remarkable success rates among the veterans who participated in regular sessions with Ghost. "We're seeing improvements in PTSD symptoms, reduction in medication dependence, and increased social engagement that typically take years to achieve through conventional therapy," she reported to the State Veterans Affairs Department. The most dramatic success story involved former Marine Sergeant David Kim, who had been unable to work or maintain relationships since returning from deployment 2 years earlier. After 3 months of weekly visits with Ghost, David had not only returned to employment, but had also rekindled his relationship with his estranged family. "Ghost taught me that it's okay to be vulnerable," David explained during a group session. "This massive, powerful animal chooses to be gentle, chooses to trust, chooses to help others heal. If he can make those choices after whatever trauma brought him to Marcus, then I can make those choices too." Marcus had partnered with the local VA office to ensure that veterans could access the sanctuary services as part of their treatment plans. The partnership had attracted attention from veterans organizations nationwide, with requests for information about replicating the program in other states. The sanctuary had also become a research site for multiple universities studying animal-assisted therapy. Graduate students in psychology, veterinary medicine, and social work regularly visited to observe Ghost's interactions with veterans and document the therapeutic outcomes. "What makes Ghost unique isn't just his size or his dramatic rescue story," explained Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a researcher from Colorado State University. "It's his apparent ability to sense and respond to human emotional distress in ways that seem almost telepathic. We're learning things about animal cognition and empathy that challenge everything we thought we knew." The expansion of the sanctuary had required significant resources, but support had come from unexpected sources. Local businesses donated supplies and services, veteran organizations provided funding, and volunteers helped with daily operations. Even Ghost seemed to understand that he was now part of something larger than just his friendship with Marcus. One of the most moving developments was the arrival of Luna, a female cow that had been rescued from a neglect situation. Ghost immediately took Luna under his protection, demonstrating the same gentle, nurturing behavior he showed with traumatized veterans. The parallel between Ghost helping Luna adjust to sanctuary life and his work with human visitors wasn't lost on anyone who witnessed their interactions. Ghost is teaching us that healing isn't a solitary process, Marcus observed during a documentary interview. Whether you're human or animal, recovery happens faster and more completely when you have someone who understands your pain and refuses to give up on you. The sanctuary had also become a place where families could reconnect. Veterans brought their spouses and children to meet Ghost, using the shared experience as a safe way to begin discussing their struggles and rebuilding damaged relationships. 8-year-old Emma Rodriguez, whose father had been visiting the sanctuary for 6 months, perfectly captured Ghost's impact. Ghost is like a really big, white angel who helps people remember how to be happy again. He helped my daddy stop being scared all the time. Marcus had documented the sanctuary's development in a blog that had gained thousands of followers. His writing about Ghost's daily interactions with visitors, the small victories and breakthrough moments, and the ongoing mystery of where Ghost had come from had inspired similar programs in other states. I used to think my war experiences had broken me beyond repair, Marcus wrote in one particularly moving post. Ghost showed me that being broken doesn't mean being worthless. Sometimes the things that have been through the most trauma are the ones best equipped to help others heal. The sanctuary had also attracted the attention of national media, with several major networks featuring stories about Ghost and Marcus's work with veterans. The coverage had brought additional support and resources, but more importantly, it had helped other veterans learn about an alternative approach to healing that might work when traditional methods had failed. As the second anniversary of Ghost's arrival approached, Marcus reflected on how completely his life had changed. The isolated, struggling veteran who had nearly given up on finding meaning and connection had become a leader in veteran advocacy and animal-assisted therapy. Ghost saved my life that night in the storm, Marcus often told visitors. But what I've learned since then is that he's been saving lives every day since. He just keeps giving, keep healing, keep showing us what's possible when love refuses to surrender to trauma. 3 years after that fateful storm night, Ghost's influence had spread far beyond the boundaries of Peaceful Acres Veteran Sanctuary. What had begun as one man's stubborn refusal to let a dying bull surrender had evolved into a movement that was changing how America approached veteran mental health and animal-assisted therapy. The sanctuary now hosted visitors from around the world, including military officials, mental health professionals, and government representatives studying the program's unprecedented success rates. Ghost had been featured in documentaries, academic papers, and policy discussions about innovative approaches to PTSD treatment. Dr. Amanda Foster, who had been appointed by the Department of Veterans Affairs to study alternative therapy programs, spent 2 weeks at the sanctuary conducting comprehensive evaluations. Her findings would influence federal policy on animal-assisted therapy for years to come. The statistical outcomes we've documented here are extraordinary, Dr. Foster reported to Congress. Veterans who participate in regular sessions with Ghost show a 73% reduction in PTSD symptoms, a 68% decrease in medication dependence, and an 85% improvement in social functioning. These results exceed anything we've achieved through traditional therapeutic approaches. Marcus had never intended to become a national advocate for veteran mental health, but Ghost's success had thrust him into that role. He now testified before congressional committees, spoke at medical conferences, and consulted with other organizations trying to replicate their model. The secret isn't Ghost's size or even his mysterious origins, Marcus explained to a gathering of VA administrators. The secret is that he offers something most therapy can't provide: unconditional acceptance from a being who has clearly survived his own trauma. Veterans recognize a fellow survivor, and that recognition creates trust that words alone can't establish. The sanctuary had expanded to include multiple therapy animals, but Ghost remained the heart of the program. His ability to sense individual needs and respond appropriately had only grown more refined over time. Veterans often said that spending time with Ghost felt like being understood by someone who had walked through hell and chosen to come back with compassion rather than bitterness. One of the most remarkable developments was the emergence of veteran volunteers who had been helped by Ghost and now returned to assist other veterans beginning their healing journey. These peer counselors, working alongside Ghost, created a support network that addressed both human and animal elements of recovery. Former Army Sergeant Lisa Chen, who had been suicidal when she first arrived at the sanctuary, now served as the program's peer coordinator. Ghost didn't just save my life, she explained to new visitors. He showed me that survival isn't enough. You have to choose what kind of survivor you want to be. Do you want to be bitter and closed off? Or do you want to be like Ghost, strong but gentle, protective but trusting, scarred but still capable of love? The sanctuary had also become a research hub where scientists studied the neurological and psychological mechanisms behind animal-assisted therapy. Brain imaging studies of veterans before and after sessions with Ghost showed measurable changes in areas associated with stress, anxiety, and emotional regulation. What we're seeing on the neurological level validates what we observe behaviorally, explained Dr. Robert Chen, a neuroscientist from Stanford University. Interaction with Ghost triggers the release of oxytocin, reduces cortisol levels, and activates neural pathways associated with healing and emotional recovery. He's literally rewiring trauma responses in the brain. The financial support for the sanctuary had grown to include federal grants, private donations, and corporate sponsorships, but Marcus insisted that the program remain free for veterans, regardless of their ability to pay or insurance coverage. Ghost doesn't ask for proof of service or insurance cards, Marcus said during a fundraising event. Healing shouldn't depend on bureaucracy or financial resources. It should depend on compassion, connection, and the willingness to show up for each other. The sanctuary had also inspired legislation at both state and federal levels, promoting animal-assisted therapy for veterans. The Ghost Act, named in honor of the Albino bull, provided funding for similar programs and established standards for therapeutic animal training and facility operations. International delegations had visited the sanctuary, leading to similar programs being established in Canada, Australia, and several European countries. Ghost's influence was literally spreading around the globe, helping veterans from different nations find healing through connections with animals who understood trauma and survival. Sometimes I look at Ghost and wonder if he knows how many lives he's touched, Marcus reflected during a quiet moment in the pasture. Veterans who were ready to give up are now helping other veterans. Families that were broken are healing together. Research that started here is changing policy worldwide, all because one stubborn farmer refused to let a dying bull surrender in a storm. As Ghost approached his 6th year at the sanctuary, his role had evolved from patient to healer to teacher to inspiration. He had proven that healing wasn't just possible, it was contagious, spreading from one wounded soul to another until entire communities were transformed. What lasting impact will Ghost's story have on future generations of veterans and trauma survivors? And how will his example continue to inspire new approaches to healing and hope? 5 years after that miraculous dawn, when a dying albino bull rose to his feet against all odds, Marcus Wheeler stood in the same pasture where he had first found Ghost, but now he wasn't alone. Hundreds of people had gathered to celebrate the 5th anniversary of Peaceful Acres Veteran Sanctuary, representing thousands of lives that had been touched by one bull's extraordinary capacity for healing. Ghost, now approaching his estimated 12th year, moved with the dignity of an elder statesman among the celebration. His pure white coat had gained a few age spots, and his massive frame carried the wisdom of years spent helping wounded souls find their way back to hope. Yet his pale pink eyes still held the same gentle intelligence that had recognized a kindred spirit in Marcus during that desperate storm. The anniversary celebration brought together veterans from across the nation, many of whom credited Ghost with saving their lives. Families who had been reunited, researchers whose work had been inspired by Ghost's example, and politicians who had championed animal-assisted therapy legislation all came to honor the bull who had changed everything. 5 years ago, I was ready to end my life, shared Marine veteran Carlos Rodriguez during the ceremony. Today, I'm here with my wife and children, working as a counselor helping other veterans find hope. Ghost didn't just save my life. He showed me that life was worth saving, that healing was possible, and that love could overcome any trauma. Dr. Martinez presented research findings that had emerged from 5 years of studying ghosts' interactions with veterans. The data was staggering. Over 2,000 veterans had participated in the sanctuary's programs, with success rates that had revolutionized approaches to PTSD treatment worldwide. Ghost has become the gold standard for therapeutic animal intervention. Dr. Martinez announced, programs modeled after this sanctuary now operate in 43 states and 12 countries. The techniques developed here are taught in veterinary schools and medical programs internationally. Marcus had written a book about his journey with Ghost, titled When Angels Wear Hooves, A Veteran's Journey from Trauma to Healing. The book had become a bestseller, with all proceeds supporting veteran mental health programs and animal rescue organizations. The most important thing Ghost taught me, Marcus read from his book during the ceremony, is that healing isn't a destination. It's a daily choice to keep showing up for each other, to keep believing in second chances, and to keep fighting for hope even when everything seems lost. The sanctuary had evolved far beyond its original scope. In addition to serving veterans, it now offered programs for first responders, abuse survivors, and children dealing with trauma. Ghost's ability to connect with anyone carrying emotional wounds had made him a beacon of hope for diverse communities seeking healing. The medical community had embraced the Ghost Protocol, a comprehensive approach to animal-assisted therapy that incorporated the lessons learned from 5 years of studying his interactions with trauma survivors. Medical schools now included courses on animal-assisted intervention, and research grants supported continued study of the neurological mechanisms behind Ghost's therapeutic success. International recognition had come in the form of the Global Peace Prize, awarded jointly to Marcus and Ghost for their contributions to veteran mental health and international understanding of trauma recovery. The prize ceremony had been held at the sanctuary, with Ghost calmly accepting the attention as if he understood the significance of the moment. What makes Ghost special isn't his size or his albinism, reflected Dr. Foster, who had become the sanctuary's research director. It's his capacity to see past the surface to the wounded soul underneath, and his unwavering belief that everyone deserves a second chance at happiness and peace. The mystery of Ghost's origins had never been solved, adding to his almost mythical status among those whose lives he had touched. Some believed he was simply a remarkable animal who had escaped from somewhere during the storm. Others insisted he was something more, a guardian angel sent to heal a broken world, one wounded soul at a time. Emma Rodriguez, now 13 and a regular volunteer at the sanctuary, had grown up alongside Ghost's mission. Ghost taught me that heroes don't always look the way you expect, she said during her speech at the anniversary celebration. Sometimes they have 4 legs and weigh 3,000 pounds, and sometimes they change the world just by refusing to give up on people who have given up on themselves. As the celebration concluded and the crowds dispersed, Marcus found himself alone with Ghost in the peaceful pasture where their journey had begun. The albino giant grazed contentedly, occasionally lifting his massive head to look at Marcus with those distinctive pale pink eyes that held so much wisdom and compassion. "You know, don't you?" Marcus said softly to his companion. "You know that you've changed everything, that you've helped more people than we'll ever be able to count. You've proven that love really can conquer trauma, that hope really can survive anything, and that sometimes the most unlikely friendships create the most powerful healing." Ghost approached Marcus and gently lowered his enormous head, allowing the veteran to scratch behind his ears, just as he had done countless times over the past 5 years. In that simple gesture was a lifetime of trust, gratitude, and unconditional love between two survivors who had found in each other exactly what they needed to not just survive, but to thrive and help others do the same. As the sun set over Peaceful Acres Veteran Sanctuary, Marcus knew that Ghost's story would continue long after both of them were gone. The principles they had discovered together, that healing is possible, that love conquers trauma, and that second chances can change the world, would live on in every veteran who found hope, every family that was reunited, and every wounded soul who learned to trust again. The albino bull who had collapsed in the rain had risen not just to save his own life, but to teach the world that miracles happen when compassion meets determination, and that sometimes the most profound healing comes from the most unexpected sources.